Hello and welcome back to Cage Cash Podcast. Ryan, it's been just over 6 months now since we were back on the airwaves. How excited are you to be talking UFC today?
Wow, John. Didn't know that stat, but yeah, really excited to get back. We have had a bit of a hiatus here, but 2024 has come, and there's going to be a lot of great stuff happening in UFC and MMA this year. So really looking forward to it. Hoping to come back with some more weekly content and share our thoughts. But yeah, really excited to jump into this UFC 297 card. How you feeling about it, John?
I couldn't be more excited. We got a perfect card to come back here. It's one that rewards the deep grinders like you in the weeds on some of the fighters, but then it's also got the name appeal, which I'm excited about. Sean Strickland, Dricus du Plessis in Ontario, the Scotia Bank Center. It's going to be a great night of fights, and we're going to do our best today to break it down for you, our loyal Cage Cash fans. If you're happy we're back, give us a like, give us a comment. We're coming for it all in 2024. So with that said, let's start with the prelims, Ryan.
Let's do it, John.
All right. First up, we have our first Canadian of the night coming in at the flyweight fight. Malcolm X Gordon coming in at 14-7, coming off 2 losses, but opened as a pretty moderate favorite here, going up against a Cage Cash favorite, Jimmy the Brick Flick. He comes in at 16-7. Both losses after his retirement over about 2 years ago. So he's not been very active and has not been very successful this far, but he's coming in at a plus 170 underdog to open up. He's the slightly younger fighter, both around 33 years old, and similar stats, except Malcolm X, he's got the 2-inch reach advantage. Ryan, how do you feel about this one?
Yeah, John. I mean, it's a pretty low level fight, honestly, to kick things off here. But it could be exciting. Both of these guys are kind of grapple first fighters. Are looking for the submission, right? That's really Flick's only path to victory here. So, I think the odds are probably a bit wide at this point because we've seen Gordon finished, a few times throughout his UFC career, and it seems like doesn't take very well to taking damage in there. But either does Flick. To your point, John, 0-2 since he's come back into the UFC, has not looked particularly good either, right? So we saw a lot of line movement earlier in the week too, just towards the Gordon side, and with such low level fighters like this, I don't know that it's really worth getting invested to. They're kind of daring you to bet unders in this spot, which I thought was pretty interesting. If you look at the lines right now, you can get the under 2.5 for, or I guess it's gone up now. So, but you can get the under 1.5 for minus 125. Where both of these guys, almost all their UFC fights have finished in that distance, particularly for Flick. All 3 of his have. So, I think that's an interesting spot, but the other way I could play this is maybe Flick by submission or something. I think that's probably his best path to victory. But
Yeah, no, I think
yeah, I'll take the dog to start the night just to ride Jimmy Flick. But I think the line's a little wide. But it's something I'll probably pass on from a betting perspective.
Yeah, I agree. I think not a lot to bank on in this fight from a betting perspective, but in honor of the return of Cage Cash, I think I'm going to put a little something on the brick to pull out the big submission here. But let's keep it moving. Keep moving down the card here.
I like it.
Next up, we got the bantamweight fight. A much heavier favorite here. We got Jasmine Jasudavicius. Dang, I even practiced that one. I still not much success, but she's coming in at 9-3, coming off a loss. She opened at the 380 favorite. It looks like now she's sitting right around the same spot, 370. I'm seeing. She's another Canadian from St. Catharines, Ontario, and then she's going up against Priscilla, the Zombie Girl Cochera. Ryan, Are you going to take the big underdog here in the early prelims women's fight, or is that too risky?
Yeah, I mean, if you've got it tuned in, right, that's probably the side I'd be looking at from a value perspective. But with that being said, right, I think Jazuda Vicious wins this fight more often than not. She hasn't been, the most exciting fighter in the UFC, winning most of her fights by decision, right? Has had a couple finishes lately over some lower level competition, whereas on the other side of things, right, you've got Cachoeira, who is a pretty good striker and is decent on the feet, but we've seen a lot of holes in her takedown defense and ability to get controlled on the ground, right? Which is very much kind of what Jasmine likes to do. So yeah, I don't see a ton being of great value in this fight. You can kind of get some overs and stuff like that at some decent numbers, just based on divisional metrics and things like that, right? A lot of these bantamweight fights tend to go to decision, but we've seen Cachoeira, have some kind of crazy fights in her UFC career, and if she wins, it tends to be inside the distance. So it's one where I'll probably just stay away. But yeah, I don't know, John. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking through it right now. I think one interesting thing, a lot of people in these heavy favorite fights, they like to look for the finishes, like to look for the higher prop bets. But Jasmine, she hasn't had a finish since it looks like her fourth professional fight back in 2020. She's done well. She's had success. Has a win over Miranda Maverick, over Gabriela Fernandez, which we watched a few months back. But she's been a fighter who does what she needs to get it done, get the win. So for that reason, I agree with you. I like Jasmine here, but I'm going to stay away from the bet.
All right. Agreeing to start things off.
All right, Ryan, this is a big one. You walked me through it a little bit, but we got Johan, the White Lion, Linnaeus, going up against Sam, the Future Patterson. Linnaeus is coming in at 9-2 off a loss. He's the Canadian, which, as we talked about, sometimes you get these national cards. They can stack wins together. But, Ryan, you were saying this is your biggest bet of the night. Who you got?
Yeah, John, I'm on the Sam Patterson side of this one. Biggest bet of the night, one of the biggest track bets I've had. I've got Sam Patterson for about 4 units, and I really like him in this spot over Linus. So the line stayed pretty consistent so far this week, and kind of going back to last week when I bet it. But kind of breaking it down, Linus is a powerful striker, wants to kind of get in there early and look for the finish. Most of his wins are coming by way of an early knockout, whereas Patterson is huge. This is actually going to be his first fight at 170, which is interesting, right? Some people seeing that as a bad thing, but he's still going to be the bigger guy in there in theory. So I think he could fill out for the weight class and be okay. But he's really well-rounded everywhere. Has very solid striking. I kind of rate his technical ability a lot better. I rate his wrestling and ground game as being better, and I like his cardio a lot. The biggest problem is what we saw in his last fight, right, when he came in and his chin was up in the air, and does a bit of the tall man's defense, right, just backing up with their head high, and that can get you caught, right? So it's definitely a concern here against Linus. I think if you're on the Linus side, I'd look at like that round 1 KO. Like I think that's kind of his path is the early finish. And yeah, I like Patterson. I like Patterson like 2-3. It's pretty even between the knockout and the submission. I could definitely see the submission happening, but I don't know. I tend to feel like Linus wants this one to play out on the feet, and I think Patterson will be able to even just pull away with the striking, and might not need to implement the wrestling as this fight goes longer. So bit of a long-winded response for you, John, but I like Patterson in the spot, and I think he's going to be a really, really solid way to start off the card and hopefully cash a big winning underdog bet to start the year.
No, I like your thoughts a lot. I'm really excited for this fight. It's sitting at -600 to finish inside the distance. That's always a good sign from just
That's
a
crazy to me, John. Like like because I already have so much money on the fight, right? I am not betting it, but I could see this one going to
yeah,
decision. Like
3 round fights. Yeah, it's not. It's
it's like Patterson has gone the distance in the past, right? A lot of his finishes are late. So if it's a little more tentative, if Linus just went to decision 2 fights ago, right? So it's not unheard of for him either, right? So it just kind of depends on the game plan that they both come in with. Obviously, we kind of expect Linus to, I think, come in swinging and either win or get knocked out trying. But yeah, like I saw like a plus 400 number or something on Fight Goes, and I don't think that's a bad look either.
Yep, I agree. What am I gonna do here? I think this might be just a good one to watch. I guess I'll have to support the Cage Cash side and go with Patterson here. So maybe I'll get crazy and look at Patterson by decision or something, see where that's stacking up on fight night.
Yeah, no, I think that's an interesting spot as well.
All right, let's keep it moving. Next up, we're going back to the women's fights. We're in strawweight. We got Gillian the Savage Robertson coming in as the heavy favorite, at least to open up. She is from Canada, but fighting out of Florida. She is just under 29 years old, and she's going up against Poliana Viana, Dama de Ferro. We're going to need a translation check there, Ryan, but I like the nickname. She's coming in 13-6, pretty heavy underdog here, and she's fighting out of Brazil. Is this another one where it's hard to bet against the heavy favorite?
Yeah, I like the Canadian women this weekend. Both of them sitting around pretty similar prices. I got in for a unit on Robertson at minus 200. It's ballooned out a little bit in this past week. Both of these women are good finishers, grapplers more than strikers for sure. Viana honestly has a little bit better striking stats on paper. But I like Robertson's physicality in the spot. I think, there's a good chance that on the ground, she's just going to be more powerful and more dominant, which you see being a real advantage in women's MMA, right? We've seen her get some pretty solid wins recently as well. So, it's favored to end inside a distance and stuff like that. Like, I don't know. It could go over. But I do like Robertson to win this fight as well. I think this sets up well, of both of them being a pretty similar skill sets, but Robertson maybe being a little bit more refined and a little bit more powerful.
Yep. I think you're spot on there. For me, this is a fight I'm looking at in parlays, especially on the Robertson side. I don't feel too strongly overall, but this is one where I'd at least have some confidence sneaking Robertson into some parlays early on.
Mm-hmm. And the younger fighter too, in Canada, right? Like I think she's becoming a bit of a bigger name for the UFC. To a certain extent, has been fighting a lot recently. And not to say Viana hasn't, right? But I think they could be on a bit of a different trajectory here. So I like Robertson to get the job done. But I don't know, with the unders being so juiced, the props are the Robertson sub is pretty unplayable in my mind. So this is a fight I'm probably just passing on if I'm taking a look at it now.
All right. Next up, and this is one, Ryan, I'm going to want you to fill me in a little bit on the background, but we got one Canadian, Siri Seedy, 10-1 overall, coming in at the favorite, and he is about 27 years old. And then we got Roman the Savage Tavares coming in 9-2 out of Jacksonville, Florida. Ryan, these guys just came out of the Contender Series, right?
Yeah, so these guys actually fought each other in the past on the Contender Series. So that was a couple fights ago for Tavares, but
4 months ago. 4 months ago, really recent.
Yeah, so Tavares quickly kind of turned things around and was back in here. He came back very quickly on the Contender Series. If you watch that fight, they were going back and forth on the feet a little bit. Some good boxing from both guys. CD dropped Tavares with a punch, and the ref stepped in really quickly. It was probably a bit of an early stoppage. So yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, Tavares definitely got caught though. Like, make no mistake, he got knocked down, right? So it's an interesting fight. I haven't done too much research into this one. I think, both of these guys are a little bit lower level in my mind, right? Like I don't know that we're learning a ton from either of these guys beating each other, right? CD has a lot of kind of hype coming in as a solid Canadian prospect, right? And should have the advantage in a few different areas. Is going to be the younger guy and the bigger guy as well. So I lean towards the CD side, but I think Tavares has a decent shot. The line's probably about right, but I don't really want to go dog chasing on Tavares, and I'm not sure I'm paying a 2-to-1 price right on a guy who's just coming off the Contender Series either. So for me, it's something I'm probably going to pass on.
Yeah, I like the analysis, especially looking at CD's kind of height and reach advantages on him, especially coming off the stoppage we saw. But I mean, I think I'm taking the lowest IQ approach here and saying it's hard to beat a guy twice in 4 months. We're watching a lot of NFL football right now. I think the same applies over there. And I think Tavares is going to come out here. He's going to walk into Canada. He's going to be the one with the chip on his shoulder, and he's going to get this done. So I based off very little, I'm jumping on the Savage train here. The second the Savage we've had tonight. So
that's right. I think back to back, Robertson and then Tavares. So maybe they'll both get it. The Savage parlay that could you have to see what that cashes out.
I like that. All right. Next up, let's keep it moving here. What do we got? We got a featherweight fight. Charles Air Jourdain, 15-6 overall, coming off 2 straight victories, fighting out of Quebec. He's going up against Sean the Sniper Woodson, 10-1-1 overall. He's the slight underdog here, fighting out of St. Louis. Ryan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm a big Charles Jourdain fan. I think he's just really fun to watch. Is a really exciting striker on the feet. He's not. We've seen him taken down and controlled, but that's not really Woodson's game, right? Woodson's a boxer, so this one should play out on the feet in theory. And the big, thing of note, I think Jourdain is probably a little bit better everywhere on the feet. The thing he's going to have to do, though, is get in on the inside. I think he's got 10-inch reach disadvantage or something to that effect. Woodson is huge for this division. He's just a big, lanky guy. But, we've seen guys get on the inside of him and break him before. So I think that's the path here for Jourdain. This line opened up much closer to a pick 'em. I didn't jump on it, and it's ballooned out to like minus 200, minus 210. So, I couldn't really even justify the Jourdain bet, even though I liked it at, minus 150, minus 160. So I can't really jump in now, but I do like the Jourdain side. Haven't taken much of a look at props on this one. I could see a late finish, or I could see it going to decision as well. Jourdain's definitely volume and kind of pressure over time and accumulation style of fighter, right? So I could see a late round 3 or decision win for Jourdain.
Yeah, I think what's interesting here is you look at Jourdain. He's got a pretty versatile history of fights. He's got 8 wins by KO, 5 by submission. He's had 7 fights that have gone to decision, and he's lost 5 out of 7 of those. So I think when you look at this fight, I agree with you. I think Jourdain's the option here, but this is probably one I'm going to stick to as a fan. I don't think I feel confident in any one result or confident enough to take that money line. So I'm cheering for our guy Air Jordan here, but I think this should be a really exciting fight.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, we're making good time here, getting through the card.
I like it.
And now the biggest fight of the night for the Cage Cash faithful. We've had one UFC fighter interact with us. It was our boy Garrett Armfield going up against the rat Brad Katana. That guy, his voice, his attitude, he's really annoying. So you already know where I come down here, but we got Brad Superman Katana coming in 13-2, the pretty big favorite here. He's Canadian. He fights out of Dublin with Conor McGregor, and he's going up against Garrett Armfield, 9-3 overall. He is the underdog fighting out of Florida, but he's the 5 years younger fighter, and he's got a 5.5-inch reach advantage, same height, which is surprising there. But Ryan, is Garrett Armfield going to get it done for the Cage Cash faithful?
Man, I hope so, John. I think I think this price is probably about right. My problem is I don't know what Armfield does much better than Katona. He'll have a little bit of the striking advantage, I suppose. Katona should have the wrestling advantage, though. Definitely the submission grappling advantage. And I think one thing I'm still worried about with Armfield is kind of what his cardio looks like in extended fights, right? Like he came in on short notice against Onama and lost, but he gassed out really badly. Obviously, I mean, still on short notice, but and then he won kind of a quick, easy comeback fight his next time out, right? So we just haven't seen a ton of him at the UFC level, whereas Katona obviously has kind of fought a who's who a little bit, right? Going in and out of the UFC. So the experience definitely lays on the Katona side. Sadly, that's probably the way I'm gonna be officially picking this one, but rooting for Armfield, and who knows, might even place a little play on him, even though my conventional wisdom is telling me that Katona should be able to get this one done.
Listen here. Armfield went into his fight against Onama. He was fighting up 10 pounds on short notice, and he got subbed. It happens, all right? But this fight, he's back at 135, where he hasn't lost since April of 2021. This man, how many knockouts does he have? He has 6 knockout wins out of the 9 career wins. He's going to come into Canada.
I don't think Katona's ever been knocked out, though. So that's what I'm saying.
Knock him out. The casuals, they hear McGregor, they look at this little dude, and they say he's going to win this fight. No, they don't know Garrett Armfield. They don't know the United States, Florida. I wish I knew a more specific location to shout out here for Garrett, but I don't. So what we're going to do is we're going to make Garrett Armfield my bet of the night. We're coming in. What are his odds looking at? They still at plus 175?
Yeah, they were right around there. So
he's moved
mine,
up.
Sam Patterson is yours. Yours, Garrett Armfield.
He's plus 182, plus 175, wherever you can get the best number. But this is the one you got to ride with if you're part of the Cage Cash faithful. We stick as a crew, and Katona is super annoying. So that's the pick here.
I like it, John.
We're going to keep it moving, though. On to the next one. What do we got? Ooh, great fight here. First fight of the main card, and also the quickest the Cage Cash has ever gotten to a main card. We got a featherweight fight between Arnold Almighty Allen coming in at, 19-2? Off a loss, though. He's opened as a slight underdog fighting out of England, and he's going up against Movsar Evloev. 17-0, the favorite coming out of Russia, and they're about the same age, pretty much the same height, and Evloev has a slight reach advantage. Ryan, is this the typical boxer? What's Evloev's background here? Walk me through.
I mean, he's definitely a grappler first, and it's going to look to implement that here on Allen, which we saw that right when he got into the UFC. He was taken down a bit, has shored that up since then. Allen should be a much better boxer on the feet. We've seen.
Why is his line so big?
Well, I mean, Evloev is 17-0. He's an undefeated fighter, right? And very much has a style where he can control people, fights very much to decision most of the time. Isn't always the most, aesthetically pleasing fighter to watch, but is very effective in there, right? And kind of comes with that background and that style. Whereas Allen is going to want to keep this one standing, work his boxing, work his kicks. I do agree, John. The line's probably a little wide at this point. If I'm betting the money line, it's the Allen side. This fight is favored heavily to go to decision as well. So, the thing is, right, it's like, can Allen stay on his feet for 2 rounds or for more than 7.5 minutes of this fight, right, and make it competitive enough and compelling enough on the feet to win a decision. So, there's value on the knockout probably as well, right? Obviously kind of favored to go the distance with Evloev never having lost, but I've been flipping back and forth on this one. But I like Arnold Allen, and I hope he pulls it off this weekend. So that's the side I'm going to ride with.
You are in lockstep with me. I love Arnold Allen here. I think a big factor is going to be the experience and the competition levels they've faced in the past. You look at Evloev, he only has 2 fights since the beginning of 2021, both victories, but the level of competition, he does have a victory over Dan Ige in there, but even Dan Ige isn't at the top of the top. And you look down Arnold's resume, and he's got Holloway, he's got I think he's got an Ilya fight in there, maybe. It's a more impressive resume at the bottom line.
It is.
So what I think is what happen here, I think this is a fight where the Canadian crowd's going to be on his side. You have the Brit against the Russian. I think that is a factor. He's going to come in with the energy. I could see Evloev kind of not fighting the smart fight. Maybe it's a big moment on the main card. He comes out looking to prove himself as a striker. And I think if that happens, Allen's going to find a hole, put him on his heels. And then, I mean, it will be big if he's able to get the finish, because I think he'll get him hurt in at least one of the rounds, but it's if he can really capitalize on it. So I'll have to make a decision here between Allen victory. But what do you think? Do you think he's got a route to just the decision victory?
I mean, he does, right? If he can keep it standing for 2 rounds, and he should win the striking exchanges in theory. So yeah, I mean, it's -300 or something to go the distance, right? So it's definitely probably his most likely path to victory, but at the same time, and
doesn't fit.
You just gotta think of the win equity on Evloev's win equity is so heavily weighted towards the decision, right? Where how much more decision equity is there for Allen to suck up, right? So, I think that's where you get a little bit different on this one, but we've seen this line kind of continue to creep up just a little bit. Seems like some people are big on the Evloev side, and I get it, right? He's very dominant in what he does. And if he's able to go out there and implement it quickly, then I think this fight is over pretty quickly, right?
But I mean, listen to me. There's been countless times I've bet against the dominant wrestling Russian, and it almost always ends in disaster. So I'll put that out there for the Cage Cash faithful.
Well, we're doing it together on this one, I think. So
all right, I like it. Let's keep it moving then. We have, I'd say, kind of the first of the 1-2 punch here. We got Chris the Action Man Curtis coming in the middleweight fight. He opened as a slight favorite. He's coming off that draw against Imavov, but he's nearing 37 years old here, which I think something we'll really focus on. But he's going up against Marc-Andre the power bar, Barrio. 16-6, the slight underdog, but he is the Canadian here, so we have the crowd on his side. Ryan, I'm not a big fan of the action man, Chris Curtis. I'd like to see him lose, but do you think he will lose?
Yeah, I don't mind the action man as much as some. I get he's kind of annoying and he's a little annoying on social media sometimes, but he is a solid fighter from a betting perspective because I think you know very well what you're going to get. He's got great cardio. He's going to keep, kind of the high shell and he's got a good chin and he's going to box. And he's going to kind of look for the counter strike, right, and try and knock Barrio out. I just don't rate Barrio all that highly. I think he was on a big losing streak prior to kind of this last 5, right, where he had lost 3 in a row, and then his last 3 wins in the UFC are all over guys I think who are no longer in the UFC. He's decent, but I don't really see his ability to, wear Curtis down and continue to kind of put the shots on him that it's going to take to get Curtis out of there. So I lean the Curtis way. I think the line's probably wider than it should be at this point. I laid a small bet on it when it was minus 135 just to win a unit. But at this price, I don't love it. If anything, it would probably be the Curtis KO for me, like a later KO. Because that's kind of the way he fights, right? He doesn't have a ton of minute winning equity because he's not super high volume.
Yeah.
But
no, I agree with a lot of that. I think one thing I do like about the action man is he is active. He gets in the ring a lot. He's coming off 2 disappointing results, both that head clash and then the loss to Gastelum. But I think
which was also had a head clash, right?
Yeah.
He argues led to his loss, right? So he hasn't been able to avoid it as of late.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, I think honestly, at his age, with one of his good friends fighting on the headline, this could be kind of a make or break going out moment for Chris Curtis. I think. I mean, you can't assume he has many more fights at that age, but you never know. I mean, he's still fighting a ton, so I guess he could. But yeah, I think he's kind of got the vibes on his side for this one. He's got him and his boy Sean on the same main card together. So I think I agree with you here. I think I like Curtis in this fight. It's probably one I'll stay away from just because I think there's a lot of variability in how Chris Curtis will stack up at this point. I think once you start in that downward age slide, it can go quick. So that's what's holding me back from a big bet on it. But if I had to pick a side, I'd say Chris Curtis here.
Yep.
All right, let's keep it moving. Big favorite in this one. We got welterweights going at it. We got Neil, the Haitian sensation Magny, coming in 28-11, big underdog. Wow, he's a huge underdog. Coming in 36 years old, 6'3", 80-inch reach, going up against Mike Proper Mallet, the Canadian favorite, the hero. He's 10-1-1, 5 consecutive wins at least. Massive favorite to open it out. He's fighting out of Canada, and he's the 4 years younger fighter. Ryan, I'm surprised this is so wide. This is honestly my first time looking at the line on this fight, but why are people rating it like that? And then where do you come down?
Yeah, I think people are rating it like that based on recent performance, right? Like Mike Malott is a bit of a mythical creature in some MMA circles, right? Like he didn't fight at all for a long time. Like he had this good start to his career, and then he became a coach and didn't fight very much. And when he did fight, he'd finish people in 30 seconds, but then he'd take another year off. He's been a little bit more active here recently, But again, it's been over very low level competition, right? So Mickey Gall, Johan Liness, who's fighting earlier on this card, right? And you got the choke against, and then Fugit as well, who's not very high level. So I think they're just seeing that quick win equity, that that ability. They're putting him high up on this card, right? I think he's a big draw, and has the opportunity, maybe not to fight for a belt, right? But I think to become a pretty solid promotion for them in the Canadian market for the next couple years. Whereas Magny, he's
See,
getting
but Ryan,
old.
you look at Magny. I mean, he has been a little up and down lately on the results page, but you look at his resume: lost to Ian Gary, beat Phil Rowe, lost to Gilbert Burns, beat Daniel Rodriguez, lost to Shavkat. Like, he's fighting the best of the best, and I think
Well, that's
that
the thing, right? I think he is this gatekeeper for the welterweight division, where if you are truly a good prospect, right, you're probably going to beat him and be able to get him out of there often. Otherwise, right, then he's probably gonna work you, right, and expose you a little bit. The thing that's what I worry about in this fight, right? Magny has such a higher level of experience, has fought so much better competition throughout his career, right? And I just, we've never seen him a lot past a first round, really, right? So it goes back to just like I don't have enough information to say that Mike Malott wins this fight 8 out of 10 times, right? Does he win the first round 8 out of 10 times? Like, yeah, probably. But it's a tough line to get behind. I actually, he was minus 250 and I put a unit on it just because I thought the line would continue to balloon and maybe I could even just cash it out or something. It has a little bit, but I think he wins, and I think he's the promotional side here. But to your point, John, I think the smart money at this number is on the Magny side.
And I think one thing we haven't talked about tonight, you look at all these fighters from Canada, it can kind of both be a massive lift to the fighters, but then you think about especially Mallet coming in near the top of the card, really to your point earlier, representing kind of the hope of Canadian UFC in many ways. And so I think, or the new future of Canadian MMA. And so I think the experience factor for Magny is really going to show itself there. If I were to look at a bet on Magny, I like the decision. Let me try to find that one quick. That's up at plus 500. I mean, I guess at that point you probably want to stick around. But you're getting good value on him, and I think given the experience, given the big spot here, this is one I'd only feel comfortable riding the underdog, but I think it's gonna be a great fight.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to it.
Perfect. All right, co-main event time. We got the UFC vacant bantamweight championship belt up for grabs. We got Raquel Rocky Pennington, 15-8 overall, but on a quite the tear here, 5 consecutive victories. She's coming in as a slight underdog, though, against Mayra Bueno Silva. Shitara, 10-2, coming off that draw against Holly Holm back 5 months ago. And she opened as the minus 165 favorite. 2 fighters past their 30s. You got Raquel coming in at 35, Myra coming in at 32, and you're seeing very similar stats. So you got Raquel with both a 1-inch height and reach advantage. Ryan, are you going with Rocky or Shitara here?
Yeah, this is a pretty decent fight up here at the top. Pennington's been around the UFC for a long time, and it would be great to see her get a victory and be able to win a belt, right? But I lean the Buena Silva side, and I think she has a good chance to kind of take a hold of this division now that Nunes is out of there. It's really the 3 of them at the top, and along with Juliana Pena, right, who is probably due a fight to the winner of this, right? So I'm interested to see how this one will play out. I think we've seen Bueno Silva really have a unique ability within women's MMA of being not necessarily a big minute winner, right? But has real ability to win moments and really find finishes on opponents. Has won a lot of her fights inside the distance. This is going to be her first 5-round fight, which is interesting. The first time she's gone 5 rounds, right? Not first 5-round fight, but first time, that she could potentially go 5 rounds. So it's an interesting spot. I think if you like Pennington, the decision is probably the way to go, right? Or you could look at an over, because I think the win equity for Pennington is really, really heavily weighted towards that decision, where I like Buena Silva inside the distance. I don't think I put a bet on this yet, but I think that the money line price is pretty much on target in my eyes. So it's probably something that I might end up sprinkling just a little bit on to have some action there. But yeah, I'm excited to see this one. What are you thinking about it, John?
Yeah, I think I'm mostly on the same page here. You got Buena Silva, the far more active fighter. I mean, you look at Pennington, it is 5 in a row, but her 5th fight ago was over 3.5 years ago, and she's just not putting up the activity. I think her last fight was about a year ago as well. So I think in terms of the activity, and to your point, I think Buena Silva is more set up to put together a real run here. And I think that type of momentum means something in these kind of fights. And then I think actually I might take a look at Buena Silva by decision here. You look at Pennington, she's only got 2 career losses inside the distance. She's clearly the crafty, experienced fighter. I could see her doing the right things to avoid the big finish, but also not putting up the volume to win enough rounds. So I'm going to go with Buena Silva as well, but I'm going to take a look at the decision, which looks like where we got that number. Let's see.
That's an interesting spot. I like that.
So that's plus 300 you're getting on the.
Yeah, that's my thing, right? I think she's got a path pretty much any of those ways. That's kind of why I lean just towards the money line bet as to what I was thinking, right? Because I think there's a good chance of all those outcomes for her. So
Great. That'll be a great co-main to get us ready for the fight that's been discussed, debated. We've watched it, part 1 in the crowd at the UFC event, but now we got the real thing. Sean Strickland, the man, the myth, the legend, taking a lot of heat this week, but he's been always controversial, always Sean Strickland. We got the UFC middleweight championship up for grabs. I did not know Sean's nickname was Tarzan, but I like it. He's coming in 28-5, 3 consecutive wins, including Israel Adesanya for the belt. Yeah, he's opening up dead even, minus 110. He's 32 years old. He's 6'1", 76-inch reach. Then you got Dricus, still knocks to Plessis, 20-2, coming off his most impressive victory in the UFC over Robert Whittaker. He's coming in out of South Africa, a slightly younger fighter, and exact same on the stats. Brian, this should be entertaining, if nothing else. What do you think we see?
Yeah, John, I'm hoping to turn it around last year. So when I was doing some of my analysis on my bets from this last year, the main events are somewhere where I really, really struggled and lost a lot of units. I know you and I were on opposite sides of a lot of them. So, the thing is, I locked a bet on Sean Strickland when this fight got announced 3 or 4 months ago at about a minus 135 number, I think. And it's closed significantly here in the last couple of days, and it looks like Du Plessis may close as the favorite here before the fight, which I think is interesting, right? We still kind of have a lot to see with Duplessis in terms of being able to fight a kind of always on pressure fighter that's not gonna sit back and wait. Where I think we can count on Strickland to go in there a little bit crazy and be able to just kind of stay on him. Whereas I think Duplessis needs time, a lot of time, to kind of collect himself and kind of he attacks in waves, right? Like it's very much kind of run at him, throw 5 punches, right, and run back to space. And I think he could have a hard time getting his offense going against Strickland, where he's using a similar strategy to what he always does, right? The thing I worry about, right? I don't know. You always hear Strickland's okay on the ground. I'm sure he's fine, but we just never have seen it out of him recently. It could be it's an unknown for me, right? It could be a net positive for him, but we've seen just how physical Duplessis is, right? Like being able to control and dominate Robert Whitaker like that, like pretty unbelievable stuff, right? So despite Sean having a jiu-jitsu background and in the past in the UFC, right, leveraging that, I think it's hard to rely on him to be able to really use that convincingly in this fight, right? So the line's probably about right, and them being even. I'm getting a little bit of buyer's remorse on the Strickland side of things, probably more with the line closing than anything, right? And I think, I don't know, I worry that Duplessis is just more on the rise, more promotable. Strickland's been fighting a lot, right? It's been very much a whirlwind of kind of, from him beating Magomedov, not even a year ago, right, to kind of quickly jumping in to fight Adesanya, winning that belt, right, and has been, the center of a media storm to a certain extent ever since, right? And I don't know what that does to a guy like that, right? Like, I don't know if he thrives on that. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. But I heard it on another podcast, right? Like I remember him being and looking very nervous before the Adesanya fight too, and even in the lead up to that, not necessarily being quite as confident or quite as Sean Strickland as you would expect, right? So yeah, I'm curious. It's a really compelling fight, and these guys hate each other. So I'm very curious to watch this one go down.
Yeah, I can't wait. I think one of the cool things about this one, you got Strickland who beat Adesanya, Duplessis who beat Whitaker. They're kind of representing this next wave of the middleweight division here for the UFC. You actually took the words out of my mouth on Strickland. I think it'll be really interesting to see what this shift in his popularity, his recognizability, he's really kind of become a name in this since the Adesanya fight. And I think the average fighter, I worry that takes them away from what they do or puts the wrong things in their mind. Sean Strickland, I have no clue what that does to him. I think he's Sean Strickland no matter what. And I think that's part of what I like about this angle. I think whether it's the championship or the sparring at his gym, that's the same dude no matter what. And then I think I worry a little bit with Strickland on on just the hatred between him and Dricus, how that carries itself out in the fight. If he comes out too aggressive, comes out gassing himself out early. I mean, honestly, he did go unanimous with Adesanya through 5 rounds, but that wasn't the typical Adesanya. And I don't know how Sean, if he's the attacker all fight, I don't know if that'll play out.
I think the cardio will hold up. I think it's just a question of if I think the cardio becomes a problem if Duplessis is the stronger, better grappler, right, and can implement that and tire him out in that way, right? I mean, because I think it's either Duplessis breaks him, right, lands something big, or he's able to wear on him to the point where, you know, Sean just can't be as effective in doing kind of what he always tends to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think it will be interesting. If Dricus wins this, he will be
Well,
the
and I
only,
think that's part. I think they want to set up Dricus to fight Adesanya too.
he'll be the only African champion is where I was going to go with that one, correct? No more Usman, no more
It's true.
more Adesanya. It'd be the first and only.
Yeah.
And so I think with this one, my brain's saying Dricus, my heart's saying Sean. Given that it's an even fight, I'll probably, this is big because you're right, Ryan. I was locked in on main events last year. I I'm going back and forth every second at the moment. I'm gonna go Sean Strickland to
Wow.
get the win by decision.
Nice. All right. Well, I like that, John. I mean, it's a tough one. I think we're both conflicted here. I wouldn't have put I think I have 2 units on it, so not too bad. But yeah, I'm hopeful for Strickland's sake that he can get one more done. You know, I think it still sets up well for Duplessis to fight Adesanya, whether or not he wins or not, right? Like I think that could be a #1 contender fight or another fight for a belt. So
I'm interested to see what the crowd's gonna go with here. I mean, he's been all over the place in Canada this week. I mean,
yeah, he has been causing some problems.
I think the UFC crowd in Toronto, well, in Toronto, yeah, I have no idea what the reaction's going to be to that guy.
Yeah, so I don't know. We'll be watching, that's for sure. And really excited. Glad to be back in the Cage Cash studio with you, John. Looking forward to a solid 2024 and hopefully cashing out some good plays.
Yeah, and everyone, just so you're aware, we're going to be trying to go each and every week yet again whenever there is a UFC event, something like this, breaking down each and every fight. If you liked the video today, please leave a comment. I think we topped out at 1 comment in era 1 of Cage Cash, so let's make it 2 in 2024.
Yep.
And then I want to see a video hit 100 views. We topped out at 95 in the first era. And I think if you look back at our data, our analysis, we had hot weeks and cold weeks, but I think we brought a lot to the table. So hopefully we're in for a big phase 2 of Cage Cash and a big 2024. So thanks for listening, and let's have some fun on Saturday.
Love it. Thanks, everyone.